Hello, I'm Kayla. I recently passed my CFI checkride, and because during my preparation I didn't find a whole lot of resources on how to tackle this whole preparation phase, I really wanted to post or describe my experience on what I did to prepare, and hopefully that will help other people to feel confident going into their CFI checkrides. So first, a couple things about me specifically, and anyone who knows me will tell you this, is that I am like the queen of overthinking. It's just my nature. I like to feel super extremely prepared on all my check rides. If I go in with this confidence that I know the material, then I'm much more likely to not get so nervous. And I do get nervous, it's just that it's more irrational nerves than it is for a real purpose that I feel like I'm more likely to be successful if I have this confidence in my knowledge, and I think that's the case for a lot of people. And check rides are just stressful overall, so I thought I want to do this the right way. I want to go in prepared, not with this surface level of knowledge, because I'm going to need this real knowledge in order to teach students. So I wanted to do it the best way I thought possible, and so here we go. So where to start? As a CFI, you'll need to be prepared to teach anyone from, a first-time student during their, sport, recreational, private, light sport, all the way up through like commercial. Obviously, maybe where you teach it'll be a little bit different of a scenario, but you need to have the knowledge all the way up through commercial. And so you're just thinking from zero to commercial level, and it's hard to know where to start. So what I will recommend is first get a copy of the CFI PTS, the private and commercial ACS. And if you don't want to buy or print these, you can find them for free on the FAA website. I did end up printing those ones from the FAA website. It probably would have been cheaper maybe to buy them, I don't know, and maybe a better format, I'm not sure, but I'll post the links if you do not want to buy them. My whole experience has been to try to save on costs wherever possible, because this is not a super cheap endeavor, and so I wanted to try to cut costs when possible. So I will post the links to the PTS, ACS, and then also you'll want the airplane flying manual and the pilot's handbook of aeronautical knowledge. So if you already have copies of those, great, but I do have hard copies, but I found that the online version was really easy, especially when I'm looking for specific content. During this whole organizing the knowledge feat, that the online version was really great, because then I could open just a specific chapter, or I could search for specific terms. So that was a really good use of that, and I was trying to make it more efficient for my time and effort as well. So you can do either one of those, but I felt it was less work to have them downloaded. Another awesome resource was this guide I found by James Kelly, and I guess it was a book that he wrote, and it was distributed and like in print and everything, but apparently it's not in print anymore from what I can tell. And even people I saw on a Reddit post that, like, even when contacted directly, he didn't have any copies in his possession, so he had them just download it. And so I can post a link to that guide as well. It is a number of years old. I think it's at least 10, maybe older. I don't recall that it even had a date in it, but regardless, even though some of the material's out of order or whatever, the material in general is great material. It's not like a lesson plan guide that you can just download the information that you want. It's basically like, and I'll have to find my tattered copy, like I printed it out, and it's well used. And it's basically like gives you a way to understand and organize the material as you develop it, and gives you ideas of how to best present it to your students, or like the best strategies that he's found. And since he's a long-time CFI, I thought, what better way to try to understand the best way to present it, the most organized way to present it, than take it from someone who's been in the industry for a while, since I don't have that experience yet. So, and I come into it with a mindset that I don't want to buy a canned lesson plan, although that might have been way less work to me. Developing and compiling the information myself helped me to dive really deep into those topics, and therefore be really fresh on that knowledge, and where the resources are, what the resources are, and instead of just like a copy paste from someone's personal lesson plans. You can do it if you have the ability to like check and double check that all the information is correct and that you understand and can present it. So that's my mindset, was to develop it myself, just for the sake of knowing that I would be really in depth on the knowledge that is within those lesson plans. So do what you want to do, make sure you know those lesson plans inside and out. And also you need to verify that it's true. I was perusing on how to organize my lesson plans well, and I did come across some lesson plans that had mistakes. So take it for what it is. If you're not verifying that information, then that could be a liability to you. Let's see. Oh, so you've compiled your CFI PTS, your Aviation, I didn't mention that one. Aviation Instructor Handbook, that's also on the FAA website. There is a new version since like June or July of 2020. Right now it's September. So if you have an older version, it still might be fine. It's gonna be generally the same knowledge, but there is an updated version. Just get the new version, especially if you don't know any different. So you've got all those materials. You have your James Kelly guide that I'll post a link to. And now you need to start by diving in to your Aviation Instructor's Handbook. So I would advise you, here's a really good resource, to Google or search Todd Shellnut on YouTube. He has a fantastic series on aviation or CFI fundamentals of instruction. And then he also has some great guidance on the things you'll need to know as an instructor for the federal regulations, and also, really important endorsements and logbook entries. So because you need to know all this information, a good way I'm thinking to do it would be to read a chapter in the airplane or aviation instructor's handbook, take notes, and like do an outline of each chapter, and then find the coordinating video, and then take notes of Todd's interpretation, because he has been a CFI for a long time. I'm pretty sure he's a master CFI, I guess, and he's definitely a gold seal, but he was also a DPE, so he has this really great perspective from a CFI perspective, and an examiner, what an examiner wants to see on a CFI checkride. So if you go chapter by chapter like that, listening to Todd's explanation and in depth, so you read about the knowledge in the airplane flying or the aviation instructor handbook, and then you watch Todd's video and make notes of examples and the way he interprets it, it's really great. You will not regret it. It's free. So I believe he also does CFI Pro courses. I don't know if it's a Patreon course or what. I didn't really go too deep into that because I was trying to focus on getting my things done. But he does have a paid course, I believe, for CFI if you are interested in that. But regardless, his free resources are amazing too. So as you go through the fundamentals of instruction, make all your notes and add all the Todd Shellnut advice and information. That'll give you what you need for your fundamentals of instruction on the PTS. if you open your PTS, you'll see that the FAA has all these tasks. So you need to read through your PTS in full at some point. But while you're preparing the knowledge that you need, it's all listed right in your PTS. So I did do lesson plans in the FOI before I realized I probably didn't need to. Most examiners probably won't ask you to do lesson plans on the FOI, but more or less like a little discussion or like talking points about the FOIs. I don't know what your examiner will do, maybe check in with them, but if I had to go back, I would just do the outlining of the book and then adding notes from Todd Shellnut and kind of using that as my study guide, so to speak. When you see, and you'll do this for everything you study, you'll see your areas of operation, the task, and then make sure you understand and can explain all the elements. Don't just come in with an acronym, because this is a teaching check ride. They need to know that you know the material, but you can also transfer the material from yourself to your client or your student, whoever. So the whole basis of this is that you have instructional knowledge. So once you get through FOIs and you're kind of like going through the Todd Shellnut videos, he does go through lesson plan, which is what I kind of got stopped up on because there was a bunch of examples and setups and everything. So I started by using his guidance and the Aviation Instructor's Handbook for where to start. As I began lesson planning, I did end up tweaking it. So I had like my template and then I'd copy paste for each topic, and then I realized, oh, I kind of want this over here, or I just kind of modify things as I went. So some of my earlier lesson plans might be slightly different setup than what I had my later lesson plans, because it was so much work and I wasn't going to go back and tweak them all to be the exact same, but they're pretty close. So what to make lesson plans on? You do not need to make a lesson plan on every single element shown in the PTS. It is still PTS right now as of September of 2020, but they have already done a rough draft or whatever they call it for the ACS. So that's going to change the game. It is out there. You can look at it. So at some point, probably in the very near future, it's going to be turning to an ACS. So from how I understand it, because I did commercial private instrument ACS, is that everything you get wrong on your written test must be addressed during your check ride. During the PTS, that is not the case. You have to do the minimums that the FAA says, and they can dive into whatever they feel that you might have weaknesses in, but it is not required for them to address all the knowledge deficiencies from your PTS codes or ACS codes, whatever the case is, like it is on the commercial, private, and instrument at this point. So keep that in mind. If it changes, just go ahead, go through and highlight all your knowledge test deficiencies, because you'll know that you have to for sure know that. You should know all the information because they can ask you anything, but be really, really diligent on those areas of weakness, because they will pick it apart. So let me tell you what I did the lesson plans for, since I didn't do it for every single topic. I did go through all elements of every task to make sure that I knew what was expected of me if we had to address those on the check ride. But the lesson plans that I did write up were I did this technical subject areas, which is area of operation 2. I did the pre-flight preparation, which is area of operation 3. I did the performance and ground reference maneuvers, which are area of operations 9 and 10. So the way I set mine up, the guide that James Kelly wrote recommends that you print everything and put it all. So he recommends that you print your ACS, PTS, and all of your lesson plans, any resources and articles, anything like that. Like, I think he wanted you to even photocopy those portions from the airplane flying handbook or the PHAC. And then, so he recommended that you put every area of operation between a divider, and then behind each area of operation, you put the task with a tab. Now, I thought that that would be a really good way to have one singular resource that you don't need to be like flipping back and forth between different documents and whatever, but I really wanted to avoid printing that much stuff or photocopying that much stuff. It would have been, this is just the ACS, PTS, two ACS, a PTS, and then I have just like an example syllabus from Sporties, and it's already pretty thick. If I would have compiled all my resources in there, I would have needed like 5 binders. So what I did do is I did print the lesson plans because I wanted to keep everything largely digital because I have a website and I want it to be easily organized for myself and for my future students. However, my check ride was not at my home airport. At my home airport, when I had any slideshows or videos that I wanted to show, I can hook up to the smart TV at our airport. They've done a really good job of setting that up. But that wasn't the case at the FBO that I was doing my check ride at. So I printed all my lesson plans, and instead of putting them in a big binder, I divided them into their subject areas, and then I tabbed all of the individual tasks. So, and then I had them bound with the hard plastic on the back, clear plastic on the front, and the wire binding. And it looks really nice. It looks very professional. And when I got there, I will tell you how I set up for the check ride at another point in time because I'm really impressed and I'm happy about it. But that's for another time when I talk about my actual check ride. As far as this goes, I will tell you that he is like the most stone-faced examiner. I've had him on every check ride I've done since I was a private applicant. And he said, so where'd you get those lesson plans, or tell me about those? And I said, you know, I wrote them word for word. And he broke his stone face, and he actually even said, oh my gosh, I'm seriously so impressed. They look so professional, and I know how much work that is, and that leaves a real impression. So I was like, yes, bonus points. So if you want to leave a really good impression, this looks fantastic. They can be used nice. It just works really good. The way I set these up online is that I connected all my PDFs for my individual lessons, and so in my document, I set it up so all the technical subject areas are in the same document, and then each of these is clickable to go to that part of the document, so that's really nice. And then within each document, I have so here's my runway incursion, and then I have things that I can send my student. I don't have to send them all, but there are just things that I found helpful when I was doing the research for each lesson plan. So there's an AOPA safety course that I can send. So they're all linked online for me to really easily reference all these things. You know, there's a video if my student doesn't have a physical copy or they don't want to use their physical copy. There's no excuses because I can send them chapter 1 or whatever chapter I want to them to read before the next lesson. I have AOPA articles and all these resources that are within the document without having to reprint the document. So in a way, I did what James Kelly recommended, that I put them all together, but I just did it, I feel like, in a more user-friendly way without having to copy and paste a crap ton of stuff and print a bunch of stuff, blah, blah, blah. So that was the way that I did it, and I feel like it works pretty well. Then James Kelly also recommends certain ways that he personally represents the material that he wants to teach. Some of the stuff I found, I mean, I used his information as guide, but certain things I did like as a PowerPoint, or I did a marker, you know, a lesson on the marker board. And while I was at training, a really helpful thing was when we did our lesson, we presented lesson plans for our classmates. There was only 2 other people in my CFI class. So we took turns like doing the maneuver lesson plans, and then we would critique each other. So that's another thing you'll learn in the Aviation Instructor's Handbook and FOIs, is that that's a really valuable tool. Because they're all, you know, I demonstrated these little speeches or whatever for the flight instructors there and the other students, and they all had really valuable advice. Like, I thought this was a little bit unclear, or maybe you should reposition this, you know, like turn this information around so that it makes more sense, or it has a more natural progression, or reorder it so it's more simple to complex ideas. And I thought that was such a great tool to be able to learn how to teach. And also, I will say, with all of these lesson plans, you need to practice them. And I don't mean like just like sit there and think about how you would practice them. You need to get in front of a marker board, or however you're going to present it. In my case, I had a little bit of all the things, and say it out loud. When I was on previous check rides and before I actually did finish this training, you know, you think you understand it in your head, and then you go to explain it to someone, and just like all this word vomit comes out. It's just like garbled, nonsensical things if you've never thought about how you would word something. So that's valuable in itself, that you actually practice it. So teach your kids, teach your husband, your wife, your dog, another flight instructor, and you know, someone who's just starting their training, someone who's a commercial student, whoever. Get people to listen. So I offered some other students at the school, you know, like I asked them, what do you feel like you could use a little bit of help on, or that you don't fully understand? And then I would make a lesson plan for them. So I got to do, you know, airspace a couple times with real students who didn't know what I was talking about. And then I could gauge, oh, maybe I should reconfigure this so it's more easily understood. And then I ended up giving that lesson plan on my check ride, and he was like, I could really tell that you've actually given this one before, because you flowed through that information because you knew it so well, and that you could tell that you've tweaked, or like you've done it in a way that makes sense, and that's because I did it in a practical way for real people. At training, we practiced giving the maneuver lessons. So when I was at training, I took a picture of my marker boards to kind of help me remember how I presented it the last time, and then I put it in my book. So whatever maneuver my examiner, or you know, when I have to give it in real life, whatever maneuver I need to explain, I kind of have like a guideline, because I might not remember the way I did it last time, or the way it worked well the last time. So I thought that was a cool plan. Let's see. Oh, another good thing that we learned at training, or they recommended at training, was to use these covers and then draw on them. So I'll erase it. So if you're explaining something, and this is actually, I'm erasing what I wrote on my check ride, but I had to explain runway incursion, so I had like a multifaceted presentation. He told me it would be scenario based, and that I had to obviously come up with a scenario. So I did a slideshow, and then I added, like, it was a discussion that also was guided by the slideshow, and then I took real airport diagrams and pretended we were going somewhere. I was, you know, he as my student, and I said, okay, what should we worry about with hot spots? And then I circled them, and I referred to the destination and the local airport. And then using you could actually draw on it and reuse it, so that was nice. And at training, they also gave us like ways to better explain electricity or the electric system. So like when you flip this switch, you can draw where the energy is coming from and going, and it's a nice way to visualize it versus just like pointing at it. That was a good tool, and my examiner seemed to like that tool. I also, as I was going through the information, so you want to get through the whole PTS, and you'll refer to the ACS and for the commercial and private because some of it you basically refer to the ACS for commercial or private for that element. But you've got to make sure you know all those required elements of each task. And when I came up with some of the lesson plans, I realized, it can be like, this is all the information I want, but how am I going to explain it? And maybe James Kelly offered some good guidance, but I visualized it in a different way. Like, how would I best understand this? Did I have problems understanding this as a student? I don't know. But a few of the things I came up with some cool flow sheets, because this would be a much more engaging and easily understood way to explain the mental process and physical process for going through and understanding if you're airworthy. So it's like, is this, you answer yes or no, and you go down, because you have to answer all those questions if you're trying to figure out if your airplane is airworthy. And included in the requirements is like, what do you do if you have an MEL? What if you do if you don't have an MEL, etc., etc. And I just visualized this as a really good way to demonstrate it versus just like droning on and explaining it verbally. I thought this was a good way to visualize the series of events that need to happen. So that was one way I did it, and I felt like I spent way too much time on it, and then I didn't even get to use it on my check ride. But I'm really proud of the resource, and I look forward to using it as a flight instructor. Another one I did was, so at training we were given this diagram of the propeller system that they got somewhere. I don't know who drew it, but it looks basically hand drawn. There's a lot of handwriting on it. And again, in my neurotic whatever processing of all of this leading up to my check ride, I rescheduled it like 4 times, so I had a lot of extra time to figure out what I wanted to improve on. So one day I drew vectors in a drawing program on my computer that digitized it and corrected some problems on it, like the flyweights were in the wrong position the flyweights were in the wrong position. This shows an overspeed condition, and the pilot valve was in the wrong position. So I, naturally that bothered me, and I didn't want to get flustered for whatever reason, and I thought easier just to come up with my own. The ink ran out when I printed it, so but then again, I can use my marker to draw the positions that these flyweights would be in and that the pilot valve would be in. And actually, I got so into it, I got so carried away that I created like 6 versions of this in various states, and I animated it into a GIF because I'm extra, I guess. But anyway, it made me really happy, and I think I did it because my brain is not super mechanical. When these things were explained to me as a student, I just kind of like nod and smile like, okay, I understand the theory that oil pressure changes these things, but how? I couldn't visualize it. I had never seen the inside of a prep system, and so it really didn't click with me. And I thought, if I have a student like that, and I'm also a bit like that, it would be much easier if I had a breakdown of the system. So that's why I do things like that, because I try to think of how I was frustrated or how I wish things would have been or whatever. And there's also one that we had for the landing gear hydraulic system. So again, it's just a good way to demonstrate it versus trying to verbally explain it. I wish that had been something that I better understood earlier on, but now I've learned a lot about myself, and I've actually learned a lot more in depth. Depth as I've gone through this process. I've realized that I didn't understand things as much as I thought I did, so this helped me to more deeply spend time with this material, and it was so fulfilling to like check mark. I made a big checklist of all the things that I needed to study and complete, and it was so rewarding to like cross that final thing off and feel really confident. So I forgot to add a couple, or at least one pertinent thing that I did in addition. I also used all of the, all the acronyms. Yes, they're important, but make sure on your checkride, do not just like roll your eyes in the back of your head, state an acronym or a letter or just the word itself, and use the acronyms to recall the actual list of information, but know the information. And one way I recalled a lot of the FOI, like lists of material, I guess. Yes, it was acronyms, but I used this app called Space, and it's an Android app, so I'm not sure. I don't think they have it on iOS, but Space, it uses this like weird text, or like whatever you call it, a weird type of text that makes your brain remember it better, I guess. And then it also uses spaced repetition to bring up the more difficult things, or the things you have had problems with more, and gets rid of the stuff that you already know well. It'll bring it back up regularly, but it'll prioritize the things that you don't know as well. So I found that to be a really good thing. Like before I go to bed, I would just turn on my Spaced app, and you can set it to do like learn 3 or 5 cards or whatever it was. I had like 30 cards that I would be trying to recall, and just doing it regularly keeps it in the front of your mind, as you'll learn from the FOIs about, your different memories. and, short-term, long-term memory, and how you solidify that and you add more information. You can do like, first you could do the cards that just have the acronyms alone. Then you could add cards that have the acronyms with explanations. And then you can try to, like, instead of just recalling the information, try to do a little like speech or, lecture on the required information, so that it can be kind of like a prompt for you to talk and discuss about it. So like progressively add more information, either yourself or in the app, to help you like do regular recall exercises. And that was so helpful and like quick and easy and pretty like slick, that you could just do some recall, maybe in the morning or midday or evening or all three, because it just helps keep it in the front of your mind and to solidify that knowledge. So another little hint on what I use for my CFI checkride preparation. This is kind of long, and I hope that I described in a way that would be helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions. I appreciate it, and I will post some links that I referred to, and I will be coming up with a video or a write-up or article or whatever about my actual check ride and what I did and what you can expect on your check ride as well. Thank you very much. Have a good day.